What's good is I'm a Cavs season ticket holder, so I guess it sold out in like 8 hours after LeBron got announced in there. So it's pretty cool. It's a cool thing for Cleveland. You know, we don't have much except for our river catching on fire and a couple other things. So Johnny, we got Johnny football, so that's good too. I mean, we're actually coming up. We got the Republican National Convention. I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, you know, I don't like any of them, but you know, hey, whatever. Just a quick intro. I'm founder and principal security consultant at Trusted Sec. I started a few years back, and really we've been growing leaps and bounds. You know, we started it 2 years ago, and we're already up to I think 22 people, which is awesome. And it's just been growing, and we just hired another guy locally, and he started last week. So it's been cool. And then I'm on the news a lot. I do like Fox News and CNN, and Jason Street likes to make the example that he always sees me on, like Fox News, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Fox News. I do a lot of them. I spread them out, but you know, I do different ones and things like that to kind of keep it going. But it's been fun. I'm the author of the Social Engineer Toolkit, which you'll see a little bit of today. And I changed the topic last minute because I've given the last talk a few times, and I haven't given this one really. And the whole purpose of this one is more fun to me because it's all about kind of destroying the human element and breaking into people's minds versus, you know, hey, how do we do certain things or fix certain things? So this will be a fun topic, I think, to go through. I've also been losing a lot of weight. I'm down 80 pounds now so far, so I've been working on that. It's the old me and the new me. That's what I wear when I go on Fox News, no joke. So you can't see that. This is after I got recorded going on Fox. This is my normal attire, so I usually wear either that or no pants at all. And I'm also the sexiest man alive still. If you haven't seen this, this is not photoshopped at all. This is not photoshopped. I was on the Katie Couric show, and so they were having this guy named Cumberpatch on it. He's one of the main actors for a TV show on BBC called Sherlock, and I guess he's one of the world's sexiest men alive or something. And so it said up next, one of the world's sexiest men alive, but then they removed the up next and hovered this there for a little bit. And so, and I was on the Katie Couric show talking about some stuff, so it was perfect timing, and I'm keeping that, and I love it. I also ride Goticorns with Jason Street. That was in Paris. And that's not photoshopped at all. That's what happens in Paris, apparently. Okay, so the agenda for today is going to be talking about really education awareness today. If you look at what we teach our users, you know, in most cases it's a pretty simplistic program because we don't want to impact a whole bunch of time on the end users themselves, especially in big corporations. I mean, you have a big company, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 employees. Taking any time away from them is extremely costly to the organization. So it's very difficult for us in the security industry to get the right information out to the right people because, you know, we're taking time away from the business or people doing business. So what we've kind of geared towards, you know, in the security industry is, you know, pay services that send phishing examples, and then from there they do additional education, you know, and additional training and things like that, or online CBTs and things like that are trying to train the users on just the basics, because we are really just trying to teach the basics to our users, because having 20,000 sensors in your environment is much better than having none, right? So at least having a basic knowledge of things to look for, predefined patterns of things that attackers typically use, just to give them a basic sense, is important. And the reason why it's important is because in today's society, I mean, we've really heightened our security on the perimeter devices. Would you say that's an accurate statement? I mean, we got firewalls and next generation firewalls and intrusion prevention systems and web application firewalls and antivirus, which I'll talk about. But you know, you have all these things that we have to protect our systems on the perimeter devices. So us as attackers, we move and shift to what's the easiest. And by far the easiest is the user, right? And our endpoints, right? Because we still don't know what we're doing on our endpoints right now. I mean, we may have HIPs installed, or we may have, you know, application whitelisting, which I'll talk about that too. We might have all these technologies at endpoints, but for us as attackers, that doesn't really stop us, because the end user will always do something in order to give us information. And what's great about it, and I'll show you an example of this really quick. Has anybody seen my Katie Couric interview before in the past? We have like one or two, it's good. So targeting one individual is actually much more difficult than targeting 500 people. Because 500 people, you mess up on one, you just move to the next one, right? And you just change your pretense to something that's going to work. There's so many great examples. Like I was doing a social engineer one time for an organization, and just by calling their help desk, it's like press 1 if you're having issues with your mainframe password, or this, or you know, you have trouble with Exchange, or I mean, it gave me all the information on the help desk, you know, the automated thing. It's great. It's like, Okay, now I know you exchange, you have a mainframe, here's stuff. Now I can start focusing on my pretext of getting those passwords. And so when I started probing, I'm like, okay, hey, all they asked for a challenge question is the birthday. How hard is it to get a birthday? Pretty easy. So from there, it's easy to then reset passwords or get access to passwords or whatever you need to do in order to do it. And so our human link will always be the weakest because we always anticipate people to be good. We always anticipate people to have good intentions. That's just the society we have. We talk about accents too. I'm horrible at accents. So we have one of our guys, Rick Hayes, has a southern accent. He's from Atlanta, Georgia, but he's got kind of like the southern twang type accent. Probably kill me for saying that, by the way. But he's great because people trust the southern type twang accents more than they do someone that's from from Cleveland, for example. So there's a lot of different things that go into this, and I'll talk about that. And really, my focus is going to be what we're taught today and destroying everything we're taught. So I'll be defeating everything that we're taught in our education awareness. Like my favorite one, by far, is the hover. Everybody heard about the hover? It's like, hey, if you get an email or a link or whatever, you have to hover over it, right? Because a hover is going to show whether or not it's legit. Well, we're going to defeat that today, and we're going to destroy that. It really sucks, by the way, because there's no real way of fixing it. And I didn't think about that when I published it, but anyways. Sorry. So how we hack today. So starting off, I'm going to walk through what we're taught, walk through what really works, and we're just going to jack some stuff up. And then I'm going to talk about how you fix it long term, okay? Because the one I'm going to show you, or the couple I'm going to show you, it's very hard to protect against. But at the same time, there are ways of protecting against it as long as we have multiple layers of security. All right, and you're going to hear that, right? We've already heard defense in depth. We've heard it since like 1992, right? It's like not a new concept, but we still don't do it. Like for example, are all of our users on their own individual segments that they only have access to what information they need on their internal network? No, right? But that's like a 1992 concept. Still don't do it today, but it's okay. We'll talk about that. All right. So today's SE phishing. We're supposed to send hundreds of emails. Sometimes people like to do misspellings because they don't want to impact the business. Phishing, by the way, if a company's never done it, is a very, very political engagement within an organization. I mean, people get pissed. And part of my language, there's going to be a couple of probably swear words that I throw out here, but people get mad at when you do phishing inside of organizations. They feel like they're being targeted. They feel like they're being singled out. And that's not the intent. And we have to be really careful when you do these in organizations because the intent isn't to make people feel embarrassed. It's to test how effective your education awareness is and how your controls are. Are your perimeter devices, is your egress filtering, your content filtering, is your endpoint protection stuff, is that working first? Is our technology piece, the function that we provide as a service to our business, working? On top of that, do our users know to report something? And do they know who to go to? Do they know how to respond to things that happen within an organization? Those are two distinctly important things within an overall education awareness program. The technology and the people. And you're not looking for 100% clipping in this in any way, shape, or form. You just want one person to say, hey, this doesn't look legit, and then from there you triage and figure out what the heck happened, right? So you just need one person in your entire organization that got targeted by this one right here, or whatever it ends up being, to do it. Now what's interesting about this stuff, right here, when we send out hundreds of emails and we do sampling and sample sizes and things like that, this does not simulate what an attacker is going to do at all. This is completely different than what we're going to see in the wild, 100%. So is this accurate of how we're training our users right now? No. I mean, maybe you're going to get a misspelled, Nigerian scam type thing where it's a Nigerian prince, and I fell for that like 5 times. I keep trying to figure out when I'm going to get the money. But most of the cases, if you're being targeted, as an organization, I'm not saying APTs or things like that, or And by the way, it's funny because like all the APT stuff cracks me up because everybody's like trying to protect against APTs and APTs. If you look at, has anybody actually watched the video of the APT1 stuff from Mandiant? It literally looks out of like a 1980s movie. Like they're not using anything sophisticated at all. They're not doing like reconnaissance or doing OSINT or anything that we talk about all the time. They're just like, hey, I'm just going to craft this really stupid email, and then people are going to click on it anyway. And they don't have to do anything different because we all fall for it. So it's like nothing sophisticated. APT stuff isn't like O-days coming off the yin-yang. People don't burn O-days on you because they want to. It's like, hey, send something stupid, and then people are going to click on it. So this isn't an accurate portrayal of what we're doing today. And the automated email stuff, it's good to do reoccurring awareness, don't get me wrong. It's important. But at the same time, the automated email stuff is training our users to be very methodical in how they look at things. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you start doing that over and over and over again and become accustomed and tuned to it, it becomes a problem. I'll talk about that. So the real world example, if I'm an attacker, all right, I'm going after a small subset of users. And the reason I'm going for a small subset of users is why? Why am I going to go after a small subset of users? Anybody know why?
You can fool some of the people all the time?
I can fool some of the people all the time, right? So lower probability of being detected, correct? The lower number of people you send emails to or target or phish, the lower probability you have of being detected. And I just have to be patient. Like, we want shells right away. If I send it to 3 people, you might wait an hour. That's about all you're going to wait. You might wait. So go get, go do something else, code something else, or do something. Come back and check to see if you got shells, no shells. Okay, come back, wait. If you don't get anything after an hour, send a couple more out. One of the ones I did recently was a pretty funny use case. The company was celebrating a 100-year anniversary, and it's a manufacturing company, and they're American and all this other stuff, and so they're selling they're celebrating this 100-year anniversary. What was great about it is they posted all over the website. It was like the website was redesigned, they had press releases and all this stuff. It's perfect, right? That is a perfect pretext for me as an attacker. Like, thank you. You couldn't get any better. So what I do is I go to their blog, and I see the contact person, the PR individual, and I email her. And I send her an email, and I said, hey, congratulations on 100 years of success. I'm from mediaprnews.com, registered domain or whatever. I'd like to do a story on you folks. Would you be interested? And she's like, literally, as soon as I hit send, I get a response back. It's like almost instant, right? And so that one email, what does that one email do for me? Does anybody know that one email when she sent it back to me? And don't think technicals is all...
Foot in the door.
Foot in the door,
Credibility.
absolutely. Credibility, signatures, perfect. So how do they sign their emails? Like, right, colors, the phone numbers, the emails, everything, right? So now you know the structure of the company, which is, just took me 2 seconds. Like, hey, went to their website, went to their blog, cool, all done. Now all of a sudden I developed this pretext, and there's a really weak pretext, I'm not gonna lie. It's one of my worst ones that I've done. But it still worked, like amazingly surprisingly, but I'll tell you that in a second. So I come up with this email saying, hey, it's a 100-year anniversary. I'm gonna spoof my name coming from this PR person. I'm gonna send it to a couple targeted people within the organization, mostly R&D, a few of the sales folks, because they click on anything you want them to. And so I'm gonna send it to a couple of these guys just to ensure I have a high success rate, right? And so I sent it to these 2, or it was like 3 or 4 people, and all of a sudden I start getting 1 million shells coming back. And the thing was the funny part was I sent them a PDF. Like a PDF, you'd be like, oh, hey, that PDF must be malicious, whatever. No, it was a legit PDF that had a fake press release in it saying, hey, we're giving away 100 free iPhones, to the first 100 people because we're so excited about our 100-year anniversary and we want to reward our employees and blah, blah, blah. This was a legit press release, no malicious content whatsoever in that PDF. Now, as soon as they clicked on the website to register for the iPhone, I harvested credentials and I jacked their computer and I had shells, right? Evil thing to do, but it worked. So I get shells, and I get like 2 or 3 back, and all of a sudden I start seeing like 1 million coming back. Like, I'm getting flooded with shells, and I'm like, oh my god, did I do something wrong? Did I send it to the wrong people? And I started forwarding it to their friends inside the company, because they're all excited, and they're like, I didn't get this, and all of a sudden I got like 300 shells coming back. I'm like, oh no. So you gotta be careful on the different ones you do. Now, funny part about that one specifically was when I compromised them and I had shells, they did actually a really good job on a defense and depth strategy. So they had application whitelisting, which I bypassed, and I'll talk about that. Then they had, all of their users were regular user accounts, which is a good practice. So if they're regular user accounts, what can I do for privilege escalation? Well, I can probably try, bypass UAC, or maybe, a couple of privilege escalation techniques, or I can try piggybacking like GPP, or a couple other ways of getting access to it. But it becomes more difficult. Now, I sent this phish out about 1 o'clock, which is my mistake. I should have did it earlier in the day. And so I sent it at 1 o'clock. By 3 or 4 o'clock, I didn't have persistence. So I didn't have maintained access to the network. So I had 300 shells, but what starts happening around 4 or 5 o'clock? People shut down and go home, right? So I start seeing shells dying. I'm like, oh no. And so they're dying. I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to do a whole other pretext again, or I can be creative. So I called this one dude up, and I had a shell from his computer, and obviously I can see who his name is and everything. I had access to all their emails, so I can look at the gal, and inside the gal I had the phone numbers there. So I call this guy up. I spoof my phone number coming from the help desk, and I call this guy up and I say, hey Bob, I just want to let you know that whole iPhone thing was total BS. It was a hacker trying to break into your computer. It wasn't legit, but we're here to help you clean it up. He's like, dang it! I knew this company was too cheap. They wouldn't give me a free iPhone. This place sucks. I'm like, whoa, Bob, it's okay, man. I understand. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and fix your computer for you. So if you notice some weird things moving around your computer, it's just me messing around. Okay? He's like, all right, fine. I'll leave it on, whatever. So then I spoof my phone number from Bob's phone, call the help desk. I say, hey, I'm Bob. I was trying to open up Office. I'm getting this kernel 729 memory pointer instruction flow. I'm like, listen, dude, I barely know how to hit the start menu. Can you please remote my computer and fix it real quick? And so, the help desk logs in, And they open up Word and it works fine. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are saviors. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for fixing my computer. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, man, of course, cool. I'm happy to help out. You know, I'm like, I'm going to tell your manager you did an awesome job. Thank you. Click. You know, so I didn't raise any suspicions. And what happens when that help desk admin logs into a machine? Creds in memory, you know, Kerberos tokens, you know, some impersonation of Kerberos tokens. Now I'm an admin. Now I got persistence. So just some fun ways of doing real world scenarios, right? That one was pretty bad. Oh, another one on this one is one of the ladies actually emailed me, and she was like, she's like, this company is so awesome. She's like, my daughter has cancer, and I'm going to give her this iPhone that's going to make her day. And I'm like, oh. So I went on about an iPhone and I sent it to her. So I'm not even messing with that. God's going to give me afterwards. So, you know. So social engineering training. Usually it's like online CBT training, you know, boring as heck, maybe one-day training session. And I apologize if it's offensive. It's kind of intended to be that way a little bit. But maybe use a third party to fish here or whatnot. But really, that's kind of what our education awareness program is today. It's just, hey, we're going to give our users a 1-hour training session, and when we might send up with some phishing emails or some sort of things, or maybe a one-day training session, whatever. And what's interesting is I was a chief security officer for Diebel. All right, so I ran the security program, I had a team, I had an education awareness program, I had all this other stuff, and we still had that 1-hour boring CBT thing. And what did I do being the chief security officer of a Fortune 1000 company when I had to take that training? Next. Finished, done for the next year. That was it. And if I'm doing that as a chief security officer, everybody else is too. That's what your online training is. It's nothing. You may put like time breaks in there. We're very creative on the time break stuff. We'll be like, next, okay, we'll do some stuff over here. Oh, I'm good, okay, yeah, next. And then, you know, so, you know, the online training stuff is interesting because, you know, it's really, you know, really boring. So if you look at real world SE training, listen, in order to actually test a company, you have to know how effective you are on your controls, okay? You need to figure out, is your technology working? Is your education working? And then part of that is continuing to build up on education. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to slam a once a year type training session. I'm going to actually focus on teaching people things. So I always like, you know, like the Target breach was a perfect example, or Heartbleed, or these issues that happen in the news. Those are great opportunities for us to relate to somebody inside the company on a security issue that impacts them personally. If you can impact somebody personally in their environment, you've done a good job because they're going to remember that. So like what I like to do with online with education awareness training is I'll be like, hey, how do you secure Facebook? Right? From your kids, you know, protect your kids. How do you secure your wireless stuff? How do you know if someone's hacking your home computer? What are free tools that you can use to protect yourself? And I'll talk about one called Emmet here in a little bit, which is a phenomenal tool. Ways of bypassing it, but I'll talk about that too. But it's a phenomenal tool to help out on protecting us 0 days and things like that. Stuff like that resonates with people. And what was interesting, I'll talk about this in a little bit, but once you have a culture that actually listens to you on security, doing security-related efforts in your organization, like things that dynamically change how people have to use their computers, makes sense to them. Like, hey, we're going to implement like two-factor authentication. Cool, did it in a week in a Fortune 1000 company. Or hey, we're implementing NAC. Cool, did that in 2 months in a Fortune 1000 company. You know, those things start to work fast, and people don't get pissed because they start to realize what you're doing. You're trying to protect them. That's a different mindset from what we're doing with this stuff. Completely different. All right, so today's equipment drops. I love the equipment drop ones that we do for testing. This is so 1997-ish, the USB drops. We have USBs in 1997? I think we did, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we did. They were expensive, yeah.
They're expensive, yeah.
USB one.
Yeah, USB 1, there we go. So we had USB drops, and you know, and this is the thing that we tell how to test, you know, whether or not people are going to pick something up that says confidential HR data and plug it into their computer, and then we're going to hack them, right? Autorun's been disabled for like ever, right? Most companies, does anybody still have Autorun enabled in their company? No. So now you have to get somebody to like double click on something or you know, run an executable or something like that's going to be pretty glaring. This stuff, I mean, I don't know, maybe it still works, but to me it doesn't. I think it's, you know, definitely dated. If you start looking at real-world scenarios of equipment, my favorite way of pen testing a company is not through phishing. Do you believe that? The author of the social engineering toolkit says phishing isn't the #1 thing, right? It's not. It's by far the coolest thing you could ever possibly do in your life. People will believe whatever you send to them, no matter what. You make that thing look legit, make it, put a nice little cover letter of the company you're going after. One of my favorite ones, and I've talked about this a couple times before, but as I sent, we were targeting a company, and Adrian probably knows a lot of this stuff here, but it's Adreno device, like a Tinsy device. Anybody ever seen a Tinsies? Okay, so it's a little microcontroller. And what we did is we disassembled a keyboard, and we put a USB repeater in there as well as a Adreno device that mimics a keyboard. Okay, and so we sent it. We packaged them. These things. These are the coolest keyboards you can buy. It's like $300. They have the backlets and the LEDs that hook up to iTunes and all this other crazy stuff, right? And we sent it to like 3 of the IT guys saying, hey, we'd like to send these out to all of our IT guys to see if it'd be beneficial for you to use these type of things for productivity. Put a letterhead on it and everything, made it from the company, sent it out to them. And what happened is it waited for a control-delete sequence, okay? And they would capture the control-delete sequence, so username, Bob, password, whatever, right? Which is usually like summer 2013 or summer 2014 or something like that. Anyway, yeah, you guys gotta go change your password after this. But so we did this and waits for the control-delete sequence, username, password. You log in, right? And then it just sits there and waits for like 7 or 8 hours. So it waits for 7 or 8 hours, and then what happens? Jiggles the keyboard a little bit to make sure it wakes it up from sleep. And then it hits Control-Delete because it's emulating a keyboard. It hits Control-Delete, it types the username and password, and then types in a PowerShell backdoor. So then it's all memory resident, and I get a shell out of the computer, and it was all legit. People have no idea what you can do with just mail delivery systems. It's amazing. You can tell people to do whatever you want to. You can be like, listen, I'm going to infect your computer with a piece of malicious code. It's going to exploit your machine and give it to bad hackers, but it's okay because it's on a letterhead. They will do it. It's okay, because it came from the mail system. As long as you tell them it's okay, it's fine. Do whatever you want to there. I love this part. This is my favorite. Because you don't have to worry about pretexting. You can just come up with whatever you want to, and as long as you send it through the mail, it works. It's great. Today's SE in person. We might impersonate a delivery person, which is fun, by the way. Impersonating delivery people, things like that, impersonating employees, piggybacking. The funny part is you don't do any crazy stuff. Like when it comes to like breaking in, no one's going to be like James Bond. Like we're computer nerds, right? And so we like to think that we're like these crazy guys that like leap through buildings and like climb fences and lockpick doors and like we're like Mission Impossible stuff, right? We got the gear and everything with like the radio and like we're like ready to go to throat mics, we're hopping in, we're breaking in, we're hacking into computer systems. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Like literally, I was doing an assessment for a major retail chain, huge, right? And what I did is I walked into the store, like dressed like this, okay? I walk up to a register. I take the register, and I walk out of the store. And I put it in my car, and I drive off. I know that's Mission Impossible. That's some crazy stuff there. The real story was I was hanging from the roof with a rope, and I was coming down, and I grabbed it, and I lifted myself back up again. No one could see me, and I got to the window, and then I walk in. You take the damn thing, you walk out. There's money in there. There's like a whole bunch of money. I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh crap, there's really money in there. I call my point of contact. I'm like, hey, I just stole a whole bunch of money. Can you please make sure I don't get in trouble? So you gotta be careful about that because there's really money in there. Or this, we went to another same customer. Went to another store. Walk in, and the server room, is in the back by the employee section. What do? I'm really bad at laughing, so it'll take a little while. Grab the server. People don't care. As long as you look like you're supposed to belong, people do not care. I mean, you can do whatever you want to as long as you don't raise suspicion. Like the Proxmark. Anybody seen the Proxmark before? You can clone badges and all that. You actually have to literally be like touching somebody. That's why I hug all the time. I'm actually cloning your badges. But Proxmarks are interesting because you actually have to, go up to somebody and you have to like literally like hop a feel with them. You're like, hey, what's up? Go up to a stranger like, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? How you doing? Yeah. Oh, hang on a second. It didn't turn green yet. Hang on. Okay, it's green. We're good. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right? Proxmark, you don't need to do that. Like, just walk into a building. Best is like this. Okay, if I'm in a suit and tie and I'm on the phone, is anybody going to stop me? Not one person. The security guard won't stop you because you look important, right? My favorite is I'll wait for, and this is going to sound horrible, so if you drive a beater car, I apologize. But, you look for somebody that comes in with like a beater car, and like just a car that's like got the muffler hanging off and it's like shooting sparks and stuff. You wait for that person, and you come with a suit and tie, and you're like, oh, hey, what was your name again? Oh, yeah, hey, I see all the hard work you did, thank you so much. And then you just walk in with them and you're talking to them, like, what's up, dude? You can do whatever you want to. There's so many different scenarios. You don't have to do anything sophisticated. There's nothing you need to do that's like crazy hopping through walls and I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done those before, and those are fun. You know, breaking into banks and stuff like that at night. There's no point in it. That's not what an attacker's really going to do. Get my clicker. All right, so what we teach our users. Users are taught on the phone, don't provide sensitive information. The funny part is, do you know what users consider sensitive information? What do users consider sensitive information? Their personal stuff, right? Hey, if you ask for a social security number, you better well have a dang good pretext because they're not going to give that up, right? Or their birth dates or things. The birth dates are pretty easy. But when it comes to what users consider personal information, it is not intellectual property. They do not consider what they're working on as intellectual property that make you unique as a company. So what's interesting about this is that you can literally call and ask for all of the recipes. Like, hey, let's just say they're a manufacturer and their core service is this chemical compound that builds this product. You could call up like one of the R&D guys, like, hey, what's your chemical compound for this product? I'm like a sales guy that's trying to deal with it. He's like, yeah, dude, it's like equals 2 to the power, whatever. You know, they'll give you whatever you want to, as long as it doesn't trigger their radar on it. My favorite is caller ID checks. Do you know how easy it is to spoof caller IDs? Ridiculous, right? You can go to your app store now and look up like spoof apps, and you can call. Like we always one of our guys, Scott, gets really agitated when you call him and like just try to play with them. So we call him and spoof him from like all of his family members, and like we have like dogs barking in the background, like police sirens and stuff. So you can do whatever you want to with these things. It's great. Anything suspicious, you gotta play the role. You gotta be confident. You can't be super nervous and things like that. We did one recently where we spoofed our phone number coming from their corporate headquarters to one of these retail store locations. And we basically did a lot of reconnaissance on one of their project managers for IT. And so I called, I spoofed them, said, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm a project manager from IT, blah, 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 blah. I'll be sending you a confirmation email, just letting you know, but these 2 guys are coming on site. Ask them for their cards, or consultants, ask them for their cards. I have to do new cards, like I just gave my trusted site card. I'm like, hey, just letting you know, and so when you walk in, like, hey, I'm so-and-so, James should have told you yesterday that I'm coming in. Oh yeah, cool, come on in, here you go, here's access to everything you need. Cool, easy to do. Phone spoofing, like literally, phone spoofing, my 6-year-old son can do it. He has done it to me. It's kind of weird, actually. It can be used in any company. Be careful on friends. One time we did so we piggybacked into this one company, right? And we get inside, and we're at this conference room. We were like looking for rooms that are open, so we're in this conference room. And I call from the conference room, all right? I'm inside this conference room, and what we're trying to do is one of our bogeys was to get access to the data center and hack the data center. So I call, and I'm like, hey, James, this is so-and-so, from security. Hey, I have 3 guys coming down, can you sign them in and just let them, into the back of the data center area? And he's like, I'm best friends with the guy you're claiming to be, right? I'm like, quick, and we like ran out of the building, right? So you gotta be careful on who you spoof and impersonate, because if they're best friends, it doesn't work so well. Users taught to hover. I'll talk about the hover in a second. The hover's my favorite one, because you're like, hey, verify the link that you're going to, because it's got to be legit, right? It's got to be good, because you hover over it and it says, hey, it's a legit domain, everything, it's got to be good, right? How am I going to defeat that? Nope, there's nothing to do with that.
Copy the URL, paste it somewhere else.
That would work. Yes.
Internationalized domain name.
Nope. So here's that version 6.4, which I released, I think, last week. What's funny is, anyways, there's a whole other story, I'll tell you. But 6.4 was released last week. If you're not familiar with SET, the Social Engineering Toolkit, it's open source, it's free. It's something that I do just as a side project when I'm on airplanes and at night and 2 in the morning. And really what it's supposed to be is a way for you to be able to pretty much bypass any preventative measure that you have to test if your technology is working. So 2 of the examples I'm going to show you, the first one is the Java app, which was kind of like the flagship product in SET, which works. The Java applet attack, what's nice about that one is it doesn't take advantage of any actual exploit. So just by design, Java sucks. And so since Java sucks, you can use it to basically do whatever you want to. So even if you're using the most up-to-date version of Java, it doesn't matter, which is why this is so successful. And the best part about it is it bypasses application whitelisting, antivirus, how do I reveal them without not revealing them? Perimeter virtualized defenses. Is that the right word? Okay. Excuse me. So it gets rid of all of those. So you don't really have to worry about those barriers, and you get shells coming out of the network, which is nice. But warning, this is just a tool. I mean, if you don't know how to use a tool and you don't do your proper reconnaissance, then you're just setting yourself up for failure. So when you use this tool, you got to do the proper research, you got to do the proper open source intelligence, because that's the most important piece of all this. You can be whoever you want to be in social engineering. You can be Bob, you can be Jane, you can be Rick, you can be whoever you want to be, as long as you do your proper OSINT, your open source intelligence, doing reconnaissance on the company. What's great about reconnaissance is like everybody posts everything with social media and everything else. Does anybody here have a LinkedIn account? Of course we all do, right? Does anybody post like the types of technology that they're really good at? Thank you, right? So it's like, hey, I work for Bank X, and I'm the FireEye administrator. We have Symantec, we have ArcSight, but we just put ArcSight in. Thank you. Now I know your monitoring detection is really weak, right? So giving me enough information on LinkedIn about the technology you use helps me a ton on profiling what technologies I have to get around as an attacker. So you do your proper reconnaissance, you should have a dossier in a company that makes it so friggin' easy to compromise them, like literally my 6-year-old can do, right? Just by doing the research. That's all you need. So here's a couple demos I'll show you. Adrian hates when I'm on stage because I move around all the time. I do it more and more when I know he's recording me.
I got plans for an Arduino device that has a motion detector to follow people.
Of course you do. So here's a Windows 8 machine, right? Because Windows 8 is much more secure. And I got AVG running with Emmet. So AVG, it doesn't matter what antivirus company you use if you don't know. Does anybody know the detection ratio right now for antivirus? 2 to 4% of actually detecting malware. So the antivirus you have in there is detecting maybe 2%. And that thing, I think that's really generous. I think that's kind of like they wanted to throw a couple percentage in it and make sure it wasn't like -2. So as far as detecting malware, getting around antivirus is ridiculously easy. Just as easy as it possibly gets. And including that, like you start adding like the endpoint protection stuff, it's even easier. Like it's just gotten, for some reason, it's gotten so much easier for us as attackers to get around that stuff. I don't know. Anyways, so this is a fully up-to-date, Windows 8 machine with Emmet, the enhanced mitigation experience toolkit, which we'll talk about. It's running the latest version of Java. Okay, so we should be good, right? We have what we normally have. We have endpoint protection. We have antivirus, and you can have like .9 or application with this thing in here too. That's fine. That's no big deal. We're gonna get around that too. And you have all this stuff on here, right? And on top of it, you have things like egress filtering, right? So you only allow like 80 and 443, but they're proxy and you're doing SSL termination on that. We'll get around that too. And then you have things like, a blue coat or a scan safe. Things like, we'll get around that too. So just wait. So what I would do in this scenario, in the new version of the toolkit, what happened is the antivirus vendors, the reason why they died off so quickly is they are predominantly signature-based, right? And so a lot of them have moved to different types of technology, like behavior analysis, network analysis, stuff like that, to try to prevent it a little bit more. Like I know, Trends, was it Deep Inspect or something like that? Does a little bit more than just antivirus signatures. It actually looks at packets, some portions of memory a little bit, some API hooks. They're getting a little more complex. The problem you have with antivirus is their signatures. So what they do is, as soon as you write, something, if someone's seen it in the wild, they write a signature off of it. And now there's millions and millions and millions of people spitting out code every single day. There's no way for them to keep up with it. So when I released SET, they started writing signatures for my in the very early stages, my binary droppers. And so I removed from doing binary droppers to just reside purely in memory, so I never touched it. So then like, okay, well, we're gonna write signatures for your jar files because your jar files can be malicious. So what I do now is anytime you go to GitHub and you do a git pull, every 5 minutes is a brand new jar that's completely dynamically obfuscated, polymorphic with encrypted AES keys every time. So I haven't been caught for like 5 years now or 4 years now. So you don't have to worry about ever being flagged. And what's nice about the new method in SET is it does predictive analysis of how effective it can compromise the system. So if it sees that it's Windows 7, it'll try multiple methods of exploitation until it finds a successful one. So for example, my favorite one, is anybody here still on Windows XP? Have some Windows XP? It's okay, I'm not even going to embarrass you because you're actually more secure than those that moved to Windows 7. You know what happened when you moved to Windows 7? This awesome thing called PowerShell. Thank you so much from the hacker community. Now don't get me wrong, PowerShell is amazing. It's functionally, it's phenomenal. It gives us an avenue that we never had before on the sysadmin side, and the guys that develop it are friggin' brilliant. But what it also does is it gives us a reliable exploitation method that we never had before. And the problem with it is that there's nothing you can really do aside from what's called app blocker, and I'll talk about that, to restrict access to it. So with PowerShell, even if it's most restrictive form, which is I believe all signed, you can bypass what's called execution restriction policies. I did a talk at DEF CON like 16 or 17 when PowerShell beta was out. And I showed how you can bypass, with another guy, Josh Kelly, how you can bypass execution restriction policies. And it's super easy. I don't think it's anything crazy. You just take your code, you cast it Unicode, then you base64 encode, and then you pass an encoded command argument, and then boom, you bypass execution restriction policies. And you can write whatever you want to. Now, a guy named Matthew Graber came out with a phenomenal attack in PowerShell that allows you to inject straight up shellcode into memory. So what you can use is you can use PowerShell, bypass execution restriction policies, and inject all your shellcode in memory without ever touching disk. So that's bad because PowerShell is what? A whitelisted application? Is it suspicious? No, right? So now I got a whitelisted application, which I never understood application whitelisting in the first place. Like, it just blew my mind that we all went to the application whitelisting room because, like, as an attacker, if I'm targeting your endpoints, which is where Bit9 is going to be installed at, right? What am I going to attack? Already whitelisted processes. I'm going to exploit Java or IE or Adobe or whatever. Those are already whitelisted. It doesn't like there's times where I'm breaking into customers and I'm like, hey, did our application whitelisting thing stop you? I'm like, oh, you guys had application whitelisting? So yeah, it was really difficult. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. I never understood the movement for that. So anyways, so PowerShell is going to be a whitelisted application. We don't have to worry about it. We can get unfiltered, memory, remote code execution through PowerShell without having to really worry about it. And set takes part of that. So the first exploitation method it tries is it detects to see if PowerShell is enabled. If PowerShell is enabled, it does the exploitation method and then injects Metasploit shellcode or whatever kind of shellcode you want to directly into memory, and then from there compromise your machine. Now what's great about most of the payloads is they're proxy aware. So if you're using HTTP or HTTPS proxies, it's going to use RFC compliant HTTP and HTTPS communications. And it's going to be proxy aware because what? They had to go to a website to get to yours, right? So they're already authenticated. And it hooks into those IE settings, and then boom, it rides over your trusted connection over RFC compliant HTTPS and HTTP. It's perfect. Works out for us because you can't see anything. It's all legitimate HTTP traffic. Now, one caveat, I don't know if you know this or not, but Metasploit, has anybody ever actually looked at a packet capture of how Metasploit actually works with the HTTP and HTTPS module interpreter? Does anybody know what actually happens there? So in Metasploit, you have what's called a first stage and a second stage. Okay, first stage is just the basic downloader. It just goes and downloads whatever. In the HTTP and HTTPS module, that downloader actually uses an HTTP request to get out to the website, and it actually downloads an executable, a PE file. Now what's the problem with that? Content filters. Content filters don't allow you to download an executable. At least most hopefully shouldn't. So there's ways of getting around that with Metasploit. There's a few different ways. The first one is there's an advanced option in Metasploit called enable stage encoding. Enable stage encoding uses what's called Shikata which gets picked up on a file level. It doesn't get picked up on the network level, which is great. Shikata mangles the PE file so that you're not downloading a PE file anymore. You're just downloading an encoded blob of data that's via HTTP and HTTPS. That gets around your content filters, which is really nice. Or you can do a couple other techniques. Like I did a DEF CON presentation last year on writing over. So I took an HTTP request and I tunneled it over SSH over HTTP, and then used that as basically a tunnel into the network and not getting detected. Yep.
What do you feel is better, multi-encoding with MSF or OISF?
So encoding to me is kind of a dead art. The encoding on Metasploit is done. There's nothing you're going to be able to use inside a pre-canned Metasploit modules like MSF encoder or MSF Venom that's going to not get picked up by most of the antivirus or traditional HIPS products that are out there. So MSF Venom's dead. Veil has some good stuff in it. So interesting enough, Veil's expanded way beyond what I did back in the day. So when I originally came out with about, I don't know, like 5 years ago, was a way of taking Python code and then using it to byte-compile it into a binary. So you had your code with the interpreter wrapped inside of it, and that's been a reliable exploitation method for the longest time to get around antivirus. And Veil took it one step further, and they actually used the same method for doing the Python encrypted executables. They also have, I think, a C1 now and a couple other ones which are nice. But what they do, that is what set does, is it encrypts all the data that would be considered malicious. So instead of encoding, you're encrypting. And then using a dynamic cipher key, which is what set uses. This is what I implemented like 5 years ago in set. So what set does is every time that you do shellcode, for example, it doesn't drop a binary at all. There's no binary whatsoever. But what happens is the shell code gets encrypted with an AES 256 bubble with a dynamic cipher key, and then that decryption happens on the fly in memory. So those are the best options because encoding is something that someone's going to be able to figure out, decode it, writes a signature for it, unless you're doing something polymorphic, which even that, like if you look at Shikata-Gaine, that was supposed to be a polymorphic engine, but they found static signatures within that that got flagged, specifically with rewrite options inside that PE file. So for me, it's all about encrypting, just keeping it encrypted and not having to worry about anything else on it.
I had good luck with, when I was using the Shikata-Gaine, and I would change what binaries I would use. Because I found out that the binary signatures were really good picked up, and then I would use different stages of encoding. So like I would do 5 steps of Shikata-Gaine.
I haven't seen that work probably for 5 years.
Really?
Yeah, using Shikata-Gaine multi-encoding, like doing multiple times, and you can also use what's called templates. And templates are taking a legitimate executable and then piggybacking your malicious code on there. Even that gets flagged now. It's been getting flagged for a while, so I haven't seen any success with that in about 5 years. And the reason why I know that is within SET originally, that's what I was using for using multiple different types of encoding. I did analysis on all of the different types of encoding and multiple encoding methods, and then changing signatures and everything else in there. And all of them get flagged now. So I'd be surprised to see if it still got hit today. So I'd recommend probably using, if you're not going to use something custom, either going with something that's pre-canon set or Veil or something like that. There's a new framework out that came out. I can't remember the name of it. If you see me afterwards, this thing looks completely badass. It actually mangles the executable, redirects execution flow to malicious code, and then uses it all in encrypted format. So that allows you to inject into legitimate PEs. But anyways, let me show you this real quick. So we use social engineering tools. We're going to go to the website attack vector. We're going to go to the Java applet attack method. And then we're going to clone a website. Now I'm going to clone just trustedsec.com as an example. You can clone any website you want to. So what this is going to do is it's going to reach out, it's going to pull a website back, clone it, it's going to inject all the malicious code into it, it's going to do a dynamic cipher key, AES encrypt it, and I also do like weird stuff too to mess with people. Like I'll base64 code it and rot it a couple times, just like random intervals. So like now you have to like unbase64 encode it and then find the dynamic cipher key and then decrypt it and then look at the memory now. So no one's going to do that. So, here, what it'll do is it'll do it. Now, what I would do is if I'm targeting a company, I would look at like a benefits website or something that's legitimately on the outside of their perimeter, and then I would clone something differently, and then I would send a fish that looks legitimate. In this case, I'm only going to do something like trustedsec.com. And I'm going to use an IP address just as an example, but I would have a domain name that's similar register to it, like benefits-trustedsec.com or something legitimate, and I'll tell you about defeating the hover here in the next example. But in this case, we'll just clone trustedsec. Now, what's interesting is with Java 7 Update 42, they disallowed self-signing certificates, okay, which means that you're not allowed to use self-signing certificates. Now, there's 2 ways of defeating that. One is you tell the user just relax your security settings so that you can allow it because it's not compatible with our new systems. That works well. Or you buy a code signing cert. Now, to get a code signing cert is very easy. You just register what's called a doing business as or a DBA. It's like 20 bucks. And then from there, you buy a code signing cert, which is like 200 bucks. And you can be a DBA as whatever you want to. Like I could be doing business as, this is secure, please trust me. Or hey, this is not malware, please click me. You can be doing business whatever you want to. So then the publisher will be anything you want it to be. Like I own verified publisher, I own like this applet is secure and signed, this has been verified to be legit. Like I own like a whole bunch of DBAs. They're just like dime a dozen. Just go buy as many as you want and then go buy a couple kind of code signing certs. Then here, so we have a couple options. Now if I'm using SET, I'm going to use either the PI injector or the multi-PI injector. Those are the 2 best options in my opinion in SET. The multi-PI injector is nice because it allows you to try to tunnel out multiple ports. So for example, if I have egress filtering, I may allow 22, 21, 53, 25, 80, 443, 80, 80, maybe a couple of those ports, right? But I don't know which one that you have open. So if I'm going to go over 80, 443, I'm going to go over HTTP and HTTPS, which you can specify in here. If I'm going to go over FTP, I'm going to emulate FTP. If I'm going to go over DNS, I'm going to emulate DNS. So you can basically have it shoot out multiple ports here, and then when the payload hits, it's going to shoot out multiple shells out those different ports until you find one that's legit. So it allows you to go out multiple ports because I know that you have one egress rule that's going to allow me outbound, unless you're super tight. So I'll just select 15, just a PI injector as an example. We'll go over 443. And I'll use an interpreter versus TCP. And this is going to set everything up for you. It's going to create the web server. It's going to automatically copy everything. It's going to inject into the new profile. It's going to create the applet for you. It's going to use a dynamic cipher key. It's going to encrypt all that with AES, and it's going to base64 randomize a little bit just to mess with people. And then on top of that, we're all set and ready to go. Now we got our site. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do next is on my Windows 7 machine or Windows 8 machine, I'm going to go to this website. And again, this is with Emmet and antivirus and all that good junk, right? Because that's all going to help. So I go to the website, and I can make the top name, obviously, look whatever I want to, okay? So the name can be whatever you want. All right? The publisher is what's static now. So, you know, when you're doing a DBA or whatever, just make it whatever you want to. Like something that's going to look legit. Like, I like something like, this applet has been verified. That's a great DBA, right? Because people are going to trust that. Or, this publisher is trusted. Or a trusted publisher. Or a verified publisher. Right? All of those are all legit DBAs, right? And those all work great. If you saw that, if you saw a trusted publisher or something on there, and this is something that got sent from your corporate email, would you believe this? Heck yes. Anybody here that says no are lying to themselves. You know, you can make this be a WebEx, portion. You can do WebEx meetings because WebEx still uses Java applets. You can do whatever you want to with this stuff. It's very creative. And again, this isn't using any type of exploit. This is how Java is designed to work, right? So we hit run. What will happen next is it redirects back to the legitimate site. So after I've cloned it and I compromise them, and it detects that I've actually compromised them, it redirects them back to the legitimate website. So now they're actually at trustedsec.com. They're not at a malicious site anymore. So they don't know they were compromised. And now since I'm using all this stuff, now by the way, this Emmet detected, that's called certificate pinning. Everybody disables that because it's a pain in the butt to manage. But this would be fine if I had a legitimate certificate, all that good stuff up, okay? So over here, we got our shelves. And we're good to go, right? We have access to our computers, and it was that easy. I mean, how long did that take me to set up? So I was talking a whole bunch, maybe a couple minutes. So that's a good one. Now my next one is defeating hovers. I love hovers. I'm going to do what's called webjacking. This was originally introduced by White Sheep and Mgen into set, which was awesome, and it's been redesigned and rewritten in version 6. A little history lesson there. And also something simple like accounts like google.com, because it has a login. But it can be anything you want to. Make sure I got an internet connection here. There we go. All right, ready to go. Again, it took me a while to make that, I know. 134. Okay, so here's what I would normally do in this type of scenario, okay? I would find a benefits website, I'd make the benefits website look legit, right? And it'd be like info-companyname.com or something like that. I send an email out to the people, and it looks legit. Inside the actual web page, I would say, listen, you're about to enter some sensitive information. Please hover over this link to make sure that it is valid and legit. Right? Make sure it's going to a trusted sec resource, because if it's going to a trusted sec resource, you know it's legit, right? So make sure it's, for one, make sure it's HTTPS, and make sure it's going to benefits.trustedsec.com. All right? So if I hover over this link right here, this works on IE, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, or whatever version they're in, Firefox, Chrome, everything else, it's all good to go. I think Opera too, but I've never tested it because I don't think people still use Opera. But anyway, so if you click on that, what does that say down there? Is that legit? You're all like, no, but I wouldn't have said that, anyways. So you hover over that and it says like, HTTPS, I'm not doing any funky things here, https://accounts.google.com, legit. Right? It's good to go, right? We all feel good. And then again, this is just a template. I would make it look beautiful and everything. I was actually doing a real SE. So you click that link, and what's going to happen? We should go to accounts.google.com, right? Well, technically we do. So we're going to briefly go to accounts.google.com. Our machine is going to contact out and make requests on accounts.google.com. But then if you notice the URL bar real quick, and again, I have a domain name and things like that to make it look more legit. We're going to do a quick switcheroo, all right? Without any user interaction. Ready? So I'm going to click. Ready? Click. Click. Where am I at? Accounts.google.com. Quick switcheroo. All right. Username, password. Enter my username and password. Redirects back to the legitimate site. They never knew that they were there. And then that was the last one here. Sorry. See the username and password? So that's what I entered in username and password. So no trick or anything, it's just how browsers are designed to work. And what's great about this stuff is I love, so I used to get really heavy into exploit dev and stuff like that, which has been great. I love doing exploit dev, it's a big puzzle. But the problem is when you find a 0-day, and we found a lot of those, you find those, and then you disclose them, and then they're fixed, and you can't use them anymore. What's nice about how features are designed to work, if you can abuse those, you either have an extremely long shelf life or a forever shelf life. So if you can abuse how things are designed to work, like Java, for example, or browsers, you have these forever. No one's going to fix this. So now we have these forever, and we can use these for our attacks going forward, and no one's going to patch it, which is great. The Java stuff, I've been talking about the Java stuff for like 8 years. It's not going to change. Probably because, personally, Java and security doesn't, anyways, not good. So pretty cool demos, huh? Neat? Good. So here's some things to ponder to fix it. Education awareness is obviously a key factor. Two-factor authentication is one. Does anybody here have two-factor authentication enabled? Anybody ever use phone factor? Don't raise your hand. Anybody ever use phone factor? I'm going to make fun of phone factor a little bit here in just a second. So phone factor is great because what phone factor does is when I log in with the username and password, let's just say in that attack I harvested the username and password, right? Now what's gonna happen next after I authenticate my username and password? Send a text, right? And it's gonna say, are you logging in right now to Outlook Web Access? And there's a little link there for yes or no, right? So you hit the link that says yes, or you hit the link that says no. What is a user going to do 99.99999% of the time? Yes. So the past 5 pen tests I've been on with phone factor, you know how many times I've been successful? All 5 times. Like literally, I'm like, oh, the first time it happened, by the way, I'm like, oh, I'm sweating. I'm like, I get in and it's like, hey, we just sent a text message. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get busted. And then I got logged in all of a sudden. I'm like, that's weird. Like maybe they didn't implement phone factor right or something. I'm like, well, second pen test, I'm like, log me in again. The hell? And then you realize these people are just hitting yes. If a normal user gets are you logging in? I'm sure I'm logging in somewhere. My phone's probably logging in right now, I'm sure. Yes. Poor implementation of two-factor authentication. If you give the user the power to error, they will error. RSA was great. I mean, you can say whatever you want to about them as a company, or whatnot, but their secure ID stuff was great because they actually had to manually type in that number. They had a hard token that they had to manually enter a number. You can't mess that up. Well, you can. If I call them like, hey, what's your number on the thing? They're like, oh, it's this, this, and this. But it takes a little more work, right? But it's a little bit less believable, okay? So make sure your two-factor is implemented appropriately, okay? That users can't mess up. Yeah.
Well, I've actually found that, I mean, when you leave your desk, I know plenty of people that I work with leave their phone at their desk.
Absolutely.
So when you get a text message, you even have the preview thing you can press on the phone. And
see the actual text message? If people are doing preview, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know that's what Google does.
Yeah. Mine doesn't. No. That's a good point. I mean, you have a couple of ways of doing it. So two-factor isn't necessarily an end-all be-all. Obviously, up-to-date software. Has anybody ever heard of uncategorized sites before?
Yes.
These are awesome. Block these. If they're not categorized, just block them. You know how much phishing site that's going to stop you from? Like 90% of what you get. Because what happens with uncategorized sites, whether you're using ScanSafe or Blue Code or whatever the heck you're using, they have this field called either uncategorized or unclassified sites. And these are sites that haven't registered themselves in any way, shape, or form or haven't been profiled. In most cases, it can give out false positives. So you will have sites that are supposed to be categorized or not categorized appropriately. But you have to be able to put that in your process. Hackers don't spend the time to categorize sites unless you're like us and a couple other folks. We'll spend time to categorize our sites. But in most cases, these don't have anything on them like most of them, like 90% of malware are going to be uncategorized. So you block this, you're literally blocking like 90% of the stuff out there. Least restriction possible, no administrative users, obviously. The enhanced mitigation toolkit I'll talk about in a second. Artillery is an open source tool that it's an active honeypot. It sets up like basically sensors that have fake ports on it that give you information back and forth that look legit. And then from there it gives you advanced notifications, another open source project. So Emmet's interesting. Has anybody not heard of Emmet before? Good, we've all heard of Emmet, go. So the enhanced mitigation experience toolkit is a way of basically blocking a lot of the zero-day techniques. As a person that writes exploits, there's a number of techniques that I use to get around preventative measures in Windows. So you have what's called ASLR, Agile Space Layout Randomization, or Data Execution Prevention, or DEP. Structure and Exception Handlers, SEH. There's a lot of different, SEH. There's a lot of different techniques to stop exploits that are built into Microsoft, okay? But all of those are bypassable based on different types of methods. Like there's one that's called ROP gadgets, or return-oriented programming, where basically you trigger an exploit, but you're not actually executing anything on the stack because you then trigger data execution prevention. So you use bits and pieces in memory to pull and assemble your little code here that then returns back to your code, and then eventually you can get around data execution prevention. It's a pain in the butt, but it works. So what Microsoft has done is they've created a tool that literally tries to look for a lot of these predefined patterns that people use, like return-oriented programming attacks. There's, I think, 6 protection mechanisms in there or something. And so it tries to look at how exploits work, like heap sprays and memory corruption flaws and buffer overflows. And it takes that and it stops a lot of them. And this thing is free. It's go and download it. Emmet 4.1, go and download it. Now there's a 5.0 tech preview that's out right now, so the version 5.0 should be released soon. But it literally stops. Like, take all of the exploits right now that are inside of Metasploit, except for Java ones, because again, Java is just designed to suck, so those are sandbox escapes and they don't necessarily protect against Emmet. But all the other normal exploits, like IE exploits and stuff like that, it stops them all today. Now, don't get me wrong, there's ways of bypassing Emmet. All right, Jared DeMott did some really good talk and research on how to bypass it. And then recently, Sickness from Offensive Security showed how to basically just disable Emmet within the process. And then from there, you can execute your code. So there are ways of bypassing Emmet, and they're not that hard to do, but as an attacker, I have to build that into the exploit I'm targeting. So if you have Emmet in place, it's another layer that you have in defense. It makes it a lot harder for me as an exploiter, especially pre-canned exploits that come out, to get around it. Here's a zero day that came out, and this is courtesy of Spider Labs, the research on this one. And you can see here that it actually checks for the Emmet DLL. Well, it was the first exploit that ever checked for the Emmet DLL. You know what it did when it found the Emmet DLL? It stopped. Didn't run the exploit. Just disabled itself. Not going to run. Not going to mess with it. So it's great stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. Attackers are going to build Emmet capabilities into there, and it's going to happen. But again, it introduces more and more complexity into it. And guess what? Microsoft's continually looking at ways of bypassing Emmet, and they're building it into the new releases. So the 5.0 tech review stops the method that I'm about to explain here. It's a method that Sickness came out with on how to bypass Emmet 4.1. And basically, it's really simple. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sickness did a lot of great work on the research on it. It's complex, but the method is simple. I mean, basically, you look for the base address of the Emmet DLL, and then you zero that out, and then now Emmet DLL is not running. So that basically gets you around all the Emmet protections in that specific process. Again, that's fixed in 5.0, or 5.0 tech review fixes that issue. But again, it's always going to be a different battle back and forth on whether or not you can fix this or not. Now, there's 2 deployment methods that I recommend. There's the group policy method deploying it, and then my favorite one is using file shares, like on your sysvol shares, and using scheduled tasks to do policy updates, because you get more granularity within the XML than you do group policy. Group policy support for Emmet blows. It sucks. So I would really recommend going with more of the file share deployment via scheduled tasks. If you want some more information, just ask me. I'm running out of time here. So how much time do I have left? Like,
You got 10 minutes.
all right, 10 minutes. So talking about fixing stuff, we should move away from the 1990s frame of attack of teaching people education awareness. I mean, literally, the stuff we were talking about is when this show was on. Was that Beverly Hills 90210? Right? That and Saved by the Bell, my 2 favorite shows when I was a kid, right? So we're teaching people like the Zach Morris way of protecting against attacks today. That's what our current posture is for education awareness. We have to shift that to do things that people can relate to, people that can understand things personally and relate that back to work. When I was at Diebold, my number 1 program wasn't vulnerability management. It wasn't monitoring attack. Well, monitoring detection was probably my number 1. They're close. Education awareness, monitoring detection from your life. Anyways, so education awareness was key, and I had people dedicated to just giving education awareness out there. And you know what happened when I started teaching people education awareness and it was working? Implementing things in the company was ridiculously easy. Like, working with IT was ridiculously easy. Working with the business was ridiculously easy. Like, I sent out a whole email to the entire company and said, hey, just so you know, every time you access VPN, no data, it's going to be 2-factor authentication, and it's happening on Sunday. We had 2 calls. Company, global company, 20,000 employees, 2 calls. That's awesome, right? That type of stuff you don't get to do unless you are able to communicate to the organization of why you're doing it and why it's effective. And people, when they understand, like, Harpley was a great example. Kudos to the security industry in Harpley, because we got our name out there, we showed the force, we had patches out, we're communicating. Those type of things resonate with people. And there's people that are like literally like have no idea what technology is asking about Harpley, right? That was beautiful. We need more of those. We need more. don't get me wrong, okay? We don't need more of those. Yeah, we do. We need more. We need more of those, all right? So introduce some more flaws in there, NSA. So we need those things to communicate. We have to relate to people. For me, the most critical security program isn't vulnerability management and penetration testing compliance. It's really just education awareness. You have to invest in education awareness. You have to do it. That is the most important part of a security program, period, to me, other than minor detection, those two. So if you look at building on a program, you can go two ways. Bruce Schneider doesn't necessarily agree that education awareness is effective or works. I would completely disagree with him because I built a security program in a company that had no security. And I built a education awareness program that worked inside of a company that didn't have one before, so I can see the direct results. Education awareness works. You just have to do it right. Okay? Step one, support group. You know, first you have to get the support in order to sell education awareness. That's coming from your executives and all those areas, and you have to communicate why you're doing it and why it's important. Now, things like monthly newsletters kind of work sometimes, but again, mostly related, like the target breach or Heartbleed, things like that you can relate to people. We did things where we monitored like pay spins and breach notification stuff, and we'd associate names with people in the company, and then we'd send emails to them saying, hey, just so you know, X was just compromised, and you have an account on there. You might want to change your password and make sure it's not the same anywhere else. Like helping people out personally, right? Hey, make it a thing for your security team. If your home computer gets infected, bring it in. Our security team will look at it and fix it for you. Those things work. Like people, I was up till like 2 o'clock in the morning as a CSO of a Fortune 1000 company, fixing someone's computer. But guess what? That person's now loyal forever, forever and ever and ever. They will help you no matter what, whether it's their son's machine or whomever. They will do whatever they possibly can to make sure that you're successful. It works. 2, if you build it, they will come. Relate again. Relate. I've hit this a lot. Quarterly newsletters, videos to me work best. We did funny videos and skits and stuff like that. I mean, things that people could like look at and just learn quick information. It's only like 5 minutes long. Things that are easy. Podcasts are good. We did a podcast. Got in trouble for that probably. Anyways, test the program. That's really going in and testing whether or not your technology and your program is working. It's a continual effort, seeing whether or not you get it, all that good stuff. Step number 4, I can't emphasize enough, if it's on their mind, they will do it. And so if you're teaching people how to protect themselves at home, or you're teaching people how to relate that to business, they will do it if they see it. So I'd rather have 20,000 sensors in my company versus 0, or just a security team running everything. It doesn't work. Let me ask a question. Does anybody here have enough staffing for the security program? People laugh, right? Laughing off the stage. Do people here have enough funding for the security program? Let me ask a question, percentage-wise, what are you compared to IT? People laugh again, right? Like 1%, 5%, 10% maybe. So you have all these things moving all the time, right? So you have people, does anybody here know every single IT project that's going on right now? People laugh again, right? There's no way to do it. So you take that into consideration. We don't have enough people, we don't have enough staffing, anything else. And now we're focusing on trying to like put controls in and change control and stuff and all these other things. And we have a whole user population here that can probably detect most of it for us. I'd rather focus on that than everything else because we don't have the people to do it right. Now, if I had 1,000 people and 1,000 IT people, it'd be a good world because I could just have one person assigned to one person every time they're doing something. Like, nope, can't do it. Nope, can't do it. Not going to work, right? Businesses aren't going to do that. So that's really that in this. I just want to show you some cool stuff really quick before I wrap up. Anybody ever seen my GPU cracker yet? You may have ever seen that one? So anybody know about GPU cracking and all that good stuff? You can mathematically computate things a lot faster using graphic processors than you can using a normal processor. So a normal processor, you might get, let's just say I'm using, the latest and greatest Mac. I might get maybe 1,000 password attempts per second, whereas a graphic processor is exponential. So I just built a new GPU cracker. I just wanted to show everybody because I'm excited about it. This is my 4th time building a GPU processor, and I've gotten a lot better through time progress. So I just want to show you my evolution of building GPU processors from when it was really horrible to what we have today. So here's my 2nd attempt. I don't have any pictures of my 1st attempt, unfortunately. That was even worse. Here's my 2nd attempt. You notice here it's cords everywhere. I had 2 different power units because we kept frying. Name is a long story. This thing here wouldn't go in, so I ended up cutting my finger and dripping blood all over the motherboard. I had to go take the motherboard back, and it's hard to explain why there's blood on the motherboard. And then you can notice here, these are all really close together, so from a heating perspective, it's just not good, not a good idea. Third attempt, that was my third attempt. So that was 8 GTX 590 Fermi chipsets. And that was a couple years back. That was a good design, I thought. You know, they look at the airflow and everything. The casing is normal, but everything else is all what I designed in there. And then our latest attempt, now, mind you, when I did this latest attempt, okay, I wanted to go big or, you know, go home, right? But what's funny about it is once we were building it, we got it all up and running. There's a guy and myself who were building this, and a guy named Paul Koblitz. We're sitting there building it and everything. And we're like, all right, listen, fun challenge, because we like to do fun things at Trusted Sec. I'm like, all right, none of us can pee until Ubuntu is loaded on here. It took us 11 hours to load Ubuntu. Couldn't get it loaded for one. We were like, towards like the 10th hour, we're like, listen, for the love of God, work. We're all like, you know. So, and what it turned out ended up being is, you know, for some reason I decided to put a DVD burner in there. No idea why. Does anybody ever still use DVDs anymore? Or would you ever use it on a password cracking rig? No, but I just decided to put it in there because I was going big or going home, right? As soon as I unplugged the damn power from the DVD thing, it worked fine. It took 11 hours to figure out. Worst day ever. Still haven't recovered. Here's our latest one. So this is 4 R9 290X's liquid cooled. And so in this configuration, we can run them completely overclocked as max as it can go. Basically, they'll stay at about 59 degrees Celsius. And what's nice about this is that you can really run them to about 100 to 104. So we don't even get to anywhere near its max temperature. So we can run these all day long and without a problem at all. They stay perfectly cool. So there's another couple screenshots of it. Beautiful. Of course, you get that neon lights. So some of the specs, it's a 32 gig Corsair Dominator, so you don't really need much on the RAM side. CD terabyte, 2 terabyte Barracudas. Again, you don't need much space in that because you're going to be loading most of it into memory. What was important is the motherboard. So I went with the Asus Rampage 4 Black, and the reason for that is it has the double wide SLI, the PCI Express slots, and they're double wide, and there's 4 of them. So in order to put 4, you know, them on there with all the liquid cooling and everything else, you needed that. And then I did 4 NVIDIA Radeon R1990Xs, liquid cooled, and then just a 1500 watt power supply. What's interesting is I blow my 20 amp circuit, so you think you need more than 20 amp circuit. So if you like run it for a really long time, it could blow the circuit. So we had to get a 40 amp circuit put in just to handle it. But I wouldn't think for 1500 watts you'd do that. I'm not an electrician guy. I don't know. So we're cracking 92.3 billion passwords per second. And so your normal processor can get about 1,000. You get 92.3 billion. So it cracks an 8-character password in 2 seconds, 9-character password in less than 20 minutes. What's nice is, has anybody messed with OCL Hashcat? Great guy, Martin Boss. He probably gave a talk on it last year. You know, cracking passwords is a methodology. Like you have to understand what you're doing with rules and everything else. We cracked a 27-character password last week using rules. It's like amazing. Like what are the chances of that happening? You know. So I mean, when you get into this, it isn't necessarily about brute forcing anymore. Brute forcing the landscape. It's how fast you can do it. Has anybody ever messed with Responder? If you haven't, check it out. It's from Spider Labs writes Responder, and basically it's a way of getting net NTLM hashes on the wire without having to do anything crazy. And then what's nice about that is you can run that through OCL and it cracks the password. So like every pen test now is just like run that, crack that. Okay, I'll try other avenues too. You know, so there's a lot of other ways of getting password hashes and cracking them really quick, and that's why these things definitely pay off. Anybody have any questions? Your brains hurt? A lot of information in an hour. All right, well, I appreciate you having me out here. Thanks very much.